Day 1. The advertisement, loosely pasted on my town's notice board, seemed simple enough. On white paper, words were crudely scrawled on it, almost like it was written by some kid who had nothing to do.
Society not good enough for you? Do you crave perfection? Come on down to Pinewood Docks, Warehouse 5, and take part in a special experiment by psychology expert Dr. Austin Ryder. Spend 5 days living in Utopia, and if you regret it in the end, we'll give you $20,000. No strings attached.
The poster screamed in my face. Now, I wasn't that interested in whatever experiment it was talking about. I mean, I just wasn't too keen on being some evil scientist's guinea pig. But what really interested me was the 20 grand at the end. Yeah, I'm a sucker for money. But what did you expect? I'm currently attending university right now, and those courses cost a ton. Plus, my parents aren't keen on floating a few bucks my way, and I'm having difficulty making ends meet as a waiter and part-time blog writer, so I have to take any opportunities that I can. Oh well, maybe a few days off couldn't hurt. It's my vacation, and I don't think the manager would hardly care if I just didn't show up. He'd just frown at me when I returned and dock my pay, which wouldn't matter, because I'd have 20 grand soon. Since I didn't know about the experiment's details, I decided to play it safe and take my wilderness backpack with me, filled with the usual energy bars, water bottles, pocket knife, and, of course, my trusty journal. I'll probably be writing down the events of the next 5 days, so that I can have something interesting to post on my blog, and hopefully get more followers. After a few hours of walking, I finally chanced upon Warehouse 5. It was an ordinary warehouse, save for the fact that a large red banner was dangling loosely around the main doors.
Welcome to Utopia,
the banner exclaimed. Well, time to face whatever experimentations the evil scientists had prepared for me, I sarcastically said in my mind as I pushed open the doors. The room behind the doors had a small table with a chair, a computer, and a person that I assumed was taking care of registration. She looked like one of those female secretaries you see in movies. You know, the usual bun hair, black rimmed spectacles, and the look of disapproval that was as though she hated everyone in the world. I walked up to the counter, and she looked up. I puffed my chest. But before I had a chance to say anything, she spoke, in a voice that had a monotonous tone. "Are you here for the experiment?" she asked. Yeah, I replied, a bit unnerved by the tone. It was almost like she didn't want to be here. She quickly scribbled down in her notepad, before looking up and speaking in the same monotonous tone. "You'll be living with the Bakers. They live in the yellow apartment, 14 Pinewood Drive." I paused. What kind of information was that? I tried to ask what the experiment was about, but she didn't look up again. After a few moments of me trying to get her attention and failing to do so, I sighed, and presuming the double doors behind her were where I needed to go, I stepped through them. I was shocked at what I saw. The landscape around me, the setting, was strikingly identical to a normal neighborhood. I was standing on a normal road, with normal houses on both sides of the road. Fire hydrants, lampposts, trash cans, and other normal stuff I'd find around the neighborhood I live in were also there. I was standing in an ordinary, suburban neighborhood. But something was wrong. The road I was standing on, it wasn't the normal gravel or concrete road I always would step on back home. It felt strangely soft, like foam. Every time I took another step, I could see the depression my shoe made on the road before it returned back to normal. In addition, the closer I analyzed the neighborhood, the more it looked fake. Like the road, the whole neighborhood, houses and all, looked soft and squishy. It was almost like I was in a large bouncy castle that was modeled after a neighborhood. This unnerved me a bit, but we were in a warehouse and in an experiment, so I didn't really care too much about it. Maybe this is the experiment. Maybe I had to test out how similar this is to real life, I thought, as I tried to reason it out. After taking a few more steps, I could hear the doors I just passed through slam shut behind me. I looked around, and sure enough, the doors were locked. I had to admit, the doors were now so different, beside the fake walls that made up the room. Well, time to spend 5 days in this weird place, I thought to myself as I carried on walking. As I walked around the neighborhood, I could see a notice board in what appeared to be the center of the place. Like everything else, when I touched it, the notice board was also soft and foam-like. Words were imprinted on the board, and when I read it, it was something like this.
Rules of Utopia. Number 1. No killing is allowed in Utopia. Number 2. No crimes can be committed in Utopia. Number 3. No deaths are allowed in Utopia.
I chuckled at the last rule. No deaths? The first two I could understand, but how is it possible to allow death, a natural part of life, to just stop? Well, this place is called Utopia after all, so I would expect death to put a bummer on this whole paradise. Still thinking about the last rule, I noticed that the sun was setting, like the fake sun in the fake sky in the fake neighborhood. The sun that shouldn't be able to move at all was setting. This unnerved me even more than the rules, and I began to wonder what the hell this place was, and what experiment was I in right now. Pretty soon, the sun set, but what was even more unnerving was that, even though there were lampposts, they weren't lighting up, which left me in complete darkness after a while. Unnerved but not panicking, I quickly took out the torchlight of my wilderness bag and switched it on, filling the neighborhood with light. Well, I guess I better follow that register's instructions and find the bakers, I thought to myself, and I began to start searching for the yellow home. And sure enough, I found it. I stepped on the foam stairs, pushed the foam door, and found myself in a foam living room. The interior of the house was also like the neighborhood. It had the usual kitchen, dining room, bathroom, with the usual furniture, but they were also made of foam. I began to wander about the house, wondering out loud if the electronics even worked in the neighborhood. Eventually, I got tired of wandering around and not finding any apparent food, and given that the foam fridge wasn't open, I ate my dinner, which consisted of snack bars and water. Going to sleep on the couch now. Hopefully the bakers wouldn't mind a stranger sleeping on their couch. Hoping this gets cleared up tomorrow. Day 2, Entry 2. I woke up to see a face staring at me. And needless to say, that scared the shit out of me and almost made me jump out of the couch. After a few seconds, I realized that the face was human and I was just looking at a person, making me feel a sense of relief. After noticing that I was awake and breathing rapidly, the person immediately stood up and extended his hand towards me. "Hey, my name is John Baker. What's yours?" he said in a crisp, friendly voice. Still reeling from the shock, and a bit weirded out by John's sudden urge to introduce himself, I begrudgingly took hold of his hand. My name is Tom," I muttered warily. "Hi, Tom. Quite frankly, I'm so proud to be your friend." Looking at John more closely, I noticed that his appearance looked unnaturally perfect. He was handsome without a doubt, with slicked back hair, a kindly smile, and no blemishes whatsoever. It was almost like I was staring at a main character from one of those soap operas they show on TV that old people love to watch all the time. Am I your friend?" "Of course. Quite frankly, everyone who sleeps in our house will always be my friend," John excitedly replied. At that moment, I was getting ready to leave the house, hopefully end the experiment so that I could get away from John, who was getting creepier by the minute. I was about to say goodbye and try to find my bag, which had suddenly gone missing, even though I swear it was right beside me when I slept, when the smell of freshly baked waffles wafted from the kitchen. Now, I'm not a big fan of waffles, but the smell was just so good. All thoughts of me leaving the experiment disappeared, and I found myself walking towards the dining room and sitting at the dining table. A woman, which I presumed to be John's mother, was sitting by the table, seemingly waiting for me and John, with waffles on her plate and 2 other plates. She had a motherly vibe to her, and she looked just like an ordinary housewife, with the long hair and worn smile on her face. "You're Tom, right? I'm Susan Baker, and thank you so much for staying at our home." Thank you," I stammered, an unnatural wave of embarrassment washing over me. "But of course, quite frankly, you are always welcome in our household." I swear, John was becoming creepier by the minute. But as soon as I remembered the $20,000, which took quite a while to come back to me for some reason, I swallowed my pride. "Come, sit down." Susan gestured at the seat in front of me, and I slowly sat down on the chair. The waffles were in the plate right in front of me now, and I could feel myself drooling from the smell and anticipation. "What are you waiting for? Let's eat." I didn't need to think twice about that, and picked up the foam fork and knife, and I tried to cut the waffles. I say tried because I couldn't quite cut them. Not because it was too hard, but because it was made of foam. The waffle, no, everything wasn't real. I laid down my fork and knife and looked around me. John had also sat down, but he was just staring at the food. Susan was also doing the same thing. No one was eating the waffles. I was unnerved at this point, and on top of that, I was really hungry. I only had snack bars for last night's dinner, and I obviously wasn't going to eat waffles that were fake. Maybe I should ask Susan where my bag is. That way I could at least have something to eat or drink. "Excuse me, Mrs. Baker?" "Yeah?" Where's my bag? I think I put stuff in there and..." "Oh, that thing? I got rid of it. You shouldn't be carrying around such dangerous stuff in Utopia, should you, Tom?" "No, I guess not," I replied, the truth suddenly hitting me in the face. If my bag's gone, I don't have anything to eat or drink. My phone was in the bag, so I can't message anyone anymore. The only thing I have is my journal, which I put on the living room table, and which I'm still writing in right now with this foam pen. While I was busy internally screaming, John, who was next to me, raised his head. "Quite frankly, Mom, you sure do know how to make some great waffles." Without thinking, I stood up and shouted, "No, she doesn't. The waffles are fake. You're fake. Everything in this place is fake. The only thing that's real is me, and I'm leaving right now." After hearing my outburst, both Susan and John's smiles disappeared for a few seconds. But then, just as I thought they finally understood, both of their smiles reappeared with alarming speed, and Susan simply said, "Are you sick, Tom? Do we need to get you to a doctor?" That was it. I stood up in a fit of rage and stormed out of the fake house. Screw this place. Screw this experiment. I'm getting out of this nightmare, I thought, as I moved towards the doors leading to the outside. Only there were no doors. For some reason, in the same place that I first found myself when I entered this nightmare, the doors were gone, replaced with that damn foam. I rushed to the wall and kicked and punched it with all my might, but there were no doors there. Eventually, my kicking and screaming attracted the attention of the people around me, which I only just noticed. They were all coming towards me with the same smiles on their faces, and they kept saying things like, "Are you okay? Are you sick? Are you all right?" Half angry and weirded out by the people's behavior, I made up some lame excuse and just ran past them down the street. As I passed by the neighborhood notice board in a bid to escape the people who were still coming after me, I saw that something new had been imprinted in red on the board.
Rule 4. No one is allowed to question reality in Utopia. We are real. We are perfect.
I'm sleeping in the park tonight. I can't trust anyone in here. I might still be hungry, but I don't have a choice. I must tolerate 5 days. 5 days, and I'll finally be free from John, Susan, and the rest of this town. Day 3. I woke up hungrier and thirstier than ever before, but I must resist. I can't go back to that nightmarish house. I must resist. As I wrote this, something changed in the neighborhood. People were walking around the park, not taking any notice of me, and talking to other people, like what you normally see in a normal park. But this wasn't normal, and the people weren't talking normally. Now, either there's something wrong with my ears, or the people started talking louder and louder to each other. They were saying stuff like, "Did you go eat at that pizza place yesterday? I heard the food there never runs out." And, Mom, I got full marks for school. Are you proud of me, Mom?" And, "Do you want to hear a joke? Why did the burglar rob the bank last night?" "Huh? He did." While the people were talking, the loudspeaker, which I know for a fact wasn't there, suddenly switched on, and the neighborhood was filled with a voice which I assumed belonged to the mayor of the town.
Hello, my fellow men, women, children, babies, and fetuses. It is a lovely morning, and I'm happy to announce that, as of yesterday, we have continued our streak of not having any accidents, deaths, or peculiar incidents of any kind. Thank you, everyone. And remember, if you're not perfect, you're not real.
The loudspeaker boomed, forcing me to cover my ears and move away from the park, in an effort to get rid of the damn noise. I must resist. Quite by chance, as I was walking away from the noises, I happened to stop near a school. For no reason, I decided to peek into the school from the gate. I was looking at what was supposedly the school field, and kids were wearing what I assumed to be sports outfits, but they weren't playing, and they weren't even moving. And they just stood there, unblinking, staring at one another. Eventually, I heard a bell ring somewhere in the distance, and the teacher screamed, "All right, did anyone get hurt? No one? Perfect. Now hurry on back to class. You wouldn't want to be late, because if you're late, you're not perfect. And if you're not perfect, you're not real." I just stood by the school gate, staring at the children for no clear reason as they walked to their classes. I want to be like them. I want to be perfect. I want to be I must resist. I can't let this place get to me. I have to get out of here. I can see John amongst the kids. He's been staring at me the whole time. Staring and continuously smiling at me. I can't take this anymore. I must stop what I'm seeing. I've been starving and dehydrated for 2 days now. The journal I'm writing in, it seems perfect. Goodbye, Utopia. The cover of the journal turned into that damned foam material. Shit. Writing seems to be the only thing that could calm my nerves. I'm not by the school gate anymore. I'm at the park again. I'm planning to sleep here, even though I can barely sleep with this hunger and thirst. Maybe the hunger can kill me before this neighborhood does. Day 4. Woke up feeling better. Not hungry, not thirsty. Shit, I'm not supposed to feel better for no reason. Unless the scientists behind this crazy experiment may have kept me alive. Just spent the entire morning screaming and cursing at the sky so that those bastards could hear me. They were the ones that did this. It was all there. It was all my fault. I was foolish to believe in that cash prize in 5 days. Now here I am, alone in a world of freaking perfectionists. I did this to myself. Maybe I can hold out the last 2 days, not lose my mind to these people. But it's getting harder. I'm tired of resisting. The mayor is speaking again. So are the people. The voices are even louder now, and they keep repeating the same thing over and over again.
We are perfect, so that we're real. The imperfect ones are all an illusion, and we are perfect, so that we're real. The imperfect ones are an illusion.
I have to resist. But I can't anymore. I'm trying to sleep now, desperately trying to drown out the noise. Must sleep. 1 more day left. Day 5. I woke up in the park today. I, quite frankly, didn't know why I was sleeping in the park. I was supposed to be sleeping in my bed in the baker's house. I just moved here 4 days ago, and I've been staying at the baker's. And quite frankly, I think they're quite kind and generous. I can't imagine anyone who would want to abandon them. Without hesitating, I grabbed my trusty notebook and rushed back to the yellow house on 14 Pinewood Drive. And sure enough, they stood in the front door waiting for me. I rushed into Mrs. Baker's open arms, and I apologized for abandoning them. "Don't worry," Mrs. Baker reassured. "Now that you're real, you will never make any more mistakes ever again. And do you know why we are real? Because we are perfect. We're smart. We knew that food was running out, so we made it permanent. We knew that our kids had to get good jobs, so we made them become geniuses. We knew that death was pointless, so we made it forbidden to die. We knew that society refused to change, so we created our own. We became perfect, so that we could be real." I cried after hearing her words, and I sunk deeper into her arms. "Come on," Mrs. Baker said after a while. "We'll be late for baking time, and we don't want to be late, do we?" "No, Mrs. Baker," I said as I detached from her arms and smiled. Together, we entered the house. I am real, because I am perfect. Note: on August 11th, 2015, authorities from the town of Pinewood received an anonymous tip regarding the location of the people who had disappeared over the past few weeks. While conducting a raid on Warehouse 5 in Pinewood Docks, a rather massive warehouse, they came across a horrifying sight. The missing people were trapped in cages, and most of them were severely malnourished and dehydrated. Dr. Austin Ryder and several people were arrested, and they admitted to hooking the victims up with hallucinogens to make them believe that they were living in a utopia while everything was perfect for them. While some of the victims succumbed easily to the delusion, some tried to resist the hallucinations, only to later succumb to it. Among the victims, one of them, Mr. Thomas Winter, my brother, kept a journal with him that detailed the ordeal that he went through before he went insane. Now, I'm showing you the contents of this journal because I knew, as his brother, that he wouldn't want anyone else to share the same ordeal. As I'm writing all this out, sitting beside my brother's bed, I can see him stirring awake and gesturing at me right now. The ordeal has left him mute, so he now forms simple words and starts up conversations using my keypad and notebook. I'm going to show you what he just did, right now. He sat up in bed, grabbed my laptop, and typed out, "I am Perfect.